Hello, parents, grandparents, future parents, and curious minds. Welcome to the podcast. I'm Steven.
And I'm PJ.
And this is
Dad's Discuss.
So, PJ, how's it going?
Going good, Steven. Glad to be here. Glad to be recording again. We just got through the 4th of July weekend.
Oh, man. You're going to date our podcast before we release it.
Is that not something we're supposed to do?
Nah, you can do it just fine.
Right.
It just ruins the illusion of everybody knowing when we're talking.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that was a good weekend for us. We got a ton of this house cleaned up. I don't know if you were here when it was chaotic, but it looks a lot better now.
It does. I was here during that, and I can personally say it looks a lot better.
Yeah, it's still a disaster zone, but we're getting there.
Well, that's what this is the Dad's Discuss podcast. Anyone who has kids knows it's quite difficult to keep your house neat and tidy when you have children.
Yeah, I get every once in a while somebody comes over that doesn't know us, and I'm like, man, the house is a disaster. I apologize, and they're like, what? This looks pretty good. And
yeah.
I'm like, no. Well, that kind of goes along with what we're talking about today is our image and how we portray ourselves around other people, right?
It does, absolutely. The community image, as we were saying, how people see us or how we would like people to see us in light of our children's eyes, correct?
Yeah, and those are two very different things that you don't think about until you're witnessing it firsthand, that you always want people to see you a certain way. But obviously, everybody has their own interpretations and how they see the world, and so they're going to see you nowhere near how you think everyone sees you, if that makes sense.
Sure.
Yeah. That may have been a ramble of a dad, and I might be getting into my dad's shoes already.
But now, the community image in terms of how we would like our children to see us so that they can become the best versions of themselves. I really like that concept. You know, you always want to put your best foot forward when dealing with anybody, but especially when your children can view you, how you interact with the world, how you interact with others, so that they themselves can learn. Because, you know, seeing and then doing is certainly,
two very different things.
Yes, but I was going to say that when children see you do something, they're much more likely to mimic that rather than if you tell them something and then turn around and do something completely different.
Yeah. Following the code of leading by example, right?
Exactly.
And what are we as parents but leaders of our children?
And hopefully good examples for our children to mimic as they continue their journey growing up and becoming a fully functioning human being.
Right. And, you know, your image in the community also opens doors for your children and gives you the opportunity to introduce them to, you know, other play friends that they may have never met if you only sit at home and send them to just school and back, right?
This is true. Yeah. If you don't have or don't present yourself with a good image, people are not going to want to be around you. Therefore, the children are not going to have those opportunities. They're not going to be going to different social functions or different after-school activities with other kids. If the parents of those other children don't want you around, they probably don't want your children around either.
So my question for you is, what's the kind of stuff you guys do in your house to set that example for your kids?
I would say not being different people around our children than we are around other adults. The version of me that my children see is the version of me that other people outside of being in the household see. So I don't change myself when I'm around my kids, therefore they are always seeing like the truest version of myself. They are always seeing how I present myself to the community at large.
A lot of things I see is that people generally have different personalities wherever they are. Like if you take a personality test when you're sitting at your work desk versus when you're sitting at like the couch with your next to your loved one, you're going to end up with two different results sometimes because your mentality is towards, well, at work I act this way, but at home I act this way, sort of thing.
Personally, I would say no. I don't think I act, not even completely, I don't even think I act different at all when I'm working versus when I'm just, with my family. And I think some part of that also stems from the fact that I have a fully work from home job.
Oh, yeah.
So I interact with my coworkers virtually. I'm not changing myself or interacting with them any differently than I do with, people if I'm talking to them face to face.
Makes sense. Yeah, I know it's one that I struggle with personally because, the demands of the job in person, dealing with other personalities is very different than dealing with my kids because I don't want to. I guess I see what you're saying. The language may change, but it's the actions and the words you put forth that might not, I guess, because I'm not going to go in and tell my employees that they're doing a great job, kiddo, and
now go clean your room up for me.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I think that also goes back to one time you mentioned that you and your daughter Anna have what you consider like the chameleon personality, where you tend to pick up on the traits of those around you, and sometimes you may act different in different social settings with different groups of people. So maybe that's just like a difference in how we interact with the world. You tend to you're more fluid, and therefore you sometimes will change the way that you speak or the way you present yourself based on who you're interacting with.
Yeah, environment, which makes it tough to have a consistent front, I guess. But I try to. I mean, I get what you're saying. It's kind of tough to sometimes.
Yeah, I don't necessarily. I mean, I've never seen you in the workforce per se, but I've seen you, in the school setting, and I don't think that the way that you interacted was significantly different. But I do agree that you probably do. There's probably noticeable changes that maybe myself isn't aware of. Like, I don't realize I'm doing it when it's occurring.
Yeah. I mean, I can tell you one thing that is an example of that personality that I have is the image Catherine had of me when I hang out with certain friend groups. Like, generally, I don't curse at all. But then when I hang out with a few different friend groups that curse a lot, it's like no holds bar.
Okay.
And so it's like, she's like, yeah, I don't know if I want to go to that event with you because you're just going to act that way and I'm not a huge fan of it, sort of thing.
All right.
But that's one example that I can think of that pulls it up. And that's definitely one that if you're trying to give your kids a good chance, avoiding that side of me, I guess, is something that's important.
Okay.
Possibly. I don't know. I think the blending in with whoever you're with is great. But leading by example and wanting your kids to be better than you, kind of tough in certain environments, right?
Yep, and it is the fact that our children, they're always watching us constantly, even if we think that they're not, and they do have a tendency to pick up on how we act. So if you're constantly hanging out with a group of people that tends to bring out traits of you that you're not always wanting them to see, they're going to pick up on it. And so do you find yourself like limiting your interactions with certain social settings when your children are around so that they don't see that side of you as much?
Yeah. I think that's a well-placed argument. Just don't bring it into the home, but don't neglect that side of yourself, you're saying. Much like I saw one of our friends went to a rage room that's now in Huntsville so they can go let out any aggression so that they're not raging at home, I guess.
That honestly is such, and we're going to go off on a tangent real quick. That is such an interesting concept that I've always wanted to participate in and have not had the opportunity. But I did see that our mutual friend went to that, and I was like, that sounds really cool.
Yeah. Yeah, I actually, when I was a kid and, when anger boiled up in me, how I was always, pretty cool-tempered. But on the occasions it did, I was like, man, I want to be rich one day so I can just buy a house, furnish it with like mirrors and stuff, and just trash it when I'm pissed off so that I don't have to be, mad when I go out to hang out with people or whatever.
Yep, and having those opportunities to express yourself differently than how you normally would kind of ties along to our community image podcast today. You can't always act the same, even though you may want to always present the best versions of yourself. You are occasionally going to have times where that's just not going to happen.
Yeah.
Knowing constructive ways to go about dealing with those emotions is something that you hopefully want to teach your children too, is it's okay to feel this way sometimes, but you have to know the proper ways to handle it. Destroying your own house or hitting another human being unprovoked.
Yeah.
You don't want those types of emotions, and those are the types of traits that hopefully we are passing on to the younger generations.
Yeah. Speaking of, like lashing out and stuff, I think some of the behavior in toddlers for me and ours, I don't know where they get it from, but then sometimes I catch myself, disciplining the dog with like batting their head away when they're trying to bite at the food in the kid's hand or whatever. So they're seeing that image of me, it's okay to hit to get people away, but I'm just trying not to let the dog bite them.
Right.
So, but they pick up on that, and then I think that it's just a theory, but probably that they're just reflecting that behavior.
It could be, but then I've also seen through my own experience, sometimes my daughter just acts in ways that I don't think she's ever seen me or my wife act before, and I just kind of scratch my head and I'm like, she is her own person. Like, she has her own attitude sometimes, and you can try your best, but sometimes they just have reactions and their own personalities, if you will, that may not be a learned trait that they've seen directly from any of their parents.
That's true. It goes back to how people see us versus how we want them to see us. They're going to have their own interpretation of us from their lived experience, and goes back to like first impressions, right? It's so crucial when you first meet someone to at least portray it, and then you can peel back your layers and open up and stuff, because that first impression, as much as everybody thinks they ignore it,
it's still a
sits
bias
in
that
there.
you, absolutely.
Yeah.
Surely.
You're gonna, I'll hark back to our college days again. I have some lifelong friends now. I haven't seen them in a while, but my first impression of them, they were in a math class with us, and I thought they were just the biggest jerks. And then later on in life, we crossed paths again, and I worked on a project with them in school, and I was like, oh, these guys are great. They just weren't portraying themselves in the best light the first time I saw them. And then, you get in a more intimate setting, and they're just people like anyone else. They were just goofing off that day, I guess, or something.
Yeah, that's interesting. So those are definitely the types of things that, like you said, you may pick up on without even realizing that you're picking up on it.
Yeah.
So the first impressions for your image are very important, because even if people say they don't have a bias, a lot of the times they will. There'll be small things they notice the first time they meet you that already give them a certain impression about you, even though that may not be who you are over an extended period.
Right. Or even outside of that, somebody knows you really well and they hear one rumor, and your image in their mind is destroyed at that point. They hear something and it repeats and it repeats and repeats, and then they just think less of you. And that's where I struggle, because, me, for a long time, I want to be everybody's friend. If somebody's out there with a bad image of me, it stresses the crap out of me, because I just want to go fix it.
Mm-hmm.
But no one's ever going to come up to you and tell you that they think you're a-hole, or I think you wronged me in this way. They'll just, like you said, cut them out of your life and ignore them from then on. And we all do it. But
Oh, yeah.
I want to fix it. But I know I've probably got some relationships out there that I can't mend, because they probably have that image of me in their head.
Yep, and that's just a normal part of life that we hope we can also explain to our kids too, especially, and I know my two oldest already know that because they're in the school setting, but for my youngest, as she starts to get more involved in like the school, she's getting older, she'll realize, if she hasn't already, that it's okay to make friends, but then there are going to be times where you don't have to be everyone's friend, and that's okay.
Very similar kids we have.
Very much.
Yeah, our oldest is very much like that too. She's like, there's a new friend, there's a new friend, there's a new friend. Well, they might not want to be your friend. You gotta introduce yourself first. But I love your spirit.
Not every person that you see instantly wants a hug and to hear your life story.
Yeah.
And but some do,
Yeah.
My daughter is funny because she will present that type of personality to everyone, even people outside of her age range. We cannot walk into even a grocery store without her instantly introducing herself to, say, the cashier and wanting to talk to them. And she's even invited them to, like, her birthday. So it's like, you just met this person, and you're like, hi, I'm having a birthday in a week. Would you like to come?
That's awesome.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, our oldest isn't quite that extroverted. She's only that way with kids her age, or kids in general. Adults, I'm shy of them, is what she'll say in front of them.
Okay.
And then they like get down to her level and offer her like some playtime or whatever, and she's like, "Oh, the shyness is gone. Like we're friends now."
And that's the community image part. Like if you're an adult and a child that you've been introduced to is shy, like how are you going to react? Are you just going to say, all right, well, I'll just go my separate way? Or are you going to present an image that the child will understand and be like, this is someone that I don't want to be shy around anymore. We can play together.
Oh, I give kids like the biggest smile when I see them out and about. They usually smile back, and some of them tuck their heads into their parents.
Who is this guy smiling at me?
I'm like, hey there, little one. Or I compliment them to their parents, like, you got a cute kid, and they're like, cool, thanks. Everybody likes to be told they have a cute kid.
Absolutely. I've seen that sometimes, especially with younger kids that I have never even met. Like, for instance, the other day, I was at Mass, and there was a child who was being held on their parent's shoulder, but they were looking backwards at me. I smiled at them, I waved, and you just see their little face light up like, someone just smiled at me, I'm going to smile back. And
yeah, make the church-going experience a little bit better for that kid.
That's right.
Because we all know sitting still for an hour is not the easiest thing on a kid's plate for the day.
For some adults, it's not the easiest thing, too.
Oh, man, we won't get into that too much, but I'm really good at meditating and recuperating during that time. Yeah, so one of the other topics along with image is, celebrities, right? Because they have their acting persona and their characters and what they want you to see. And then harking back to the old mantra of never meet your heroes, people have that relationship with the image they see on the screen every day, watching it over and over again. You can see how it gets built up in their mind with this person who has their own life, who acted as a character, how they think they are in real life, but they're not. They're just a normal everyday person, not that image that they portrayed. Yep,
and I think it's important to hit early on, especially in this age of technology, to your children that some people, that is their job. They present a different image than who they actually are, and to not be surprised when you find out that may not actually be what you thought about that individual.
Right. Speaking of which, have you guys watched much live action stuff with your kids? Or at least the little one? I know you got teenagers now. They probably figured it out, but I think ours only watched the occasional cartoon and stuff. We watched Sound of Music once, and she liked that, but she's not like a consumer of live action, actual people running around doing stuff.
Yeah, not too much. She is the type of person who would prefer to be outside rather than watching programs, and she cannot sit through full movies per se for long periods of time. She will, but they're almost always, as you said, cartoons. I'm trying to think of a live action movie that we've been able to watch fully with her, and the only one that comes to mind still involve like cartoon characters. So like we've watched that old Scooby-Doo movie with you know what I'm talking about.
With the CG Scooby.
Yeah.
All that's and who the heck played Fred? Was it Freddie Prinze Jr.?
Yeah,
he was
Sarah
in it,
Michelle
but I don't know if he
was
played
in there.
Fred.
Yep. So she enjoyed that. She really enjoyed Detective Pikachu.
Oh, that was a good one.
That was a good one. But in terms of full movies of only people, no, I just don't think that she has the interest for that.
I'm wondering when that'll break. I mean, I know you have teenagers. Yeah, speaking of image, you were just mentioning during our little break there about health and stuff. So, building up that muscle and getting skinny and projecting that confident posture is a big play in image.
Absolutely. Kimmer gets on to me about that all the time as she does the other kids, like, stand up straighter, like you don't want to be hunched over. So projecting the good physical image as well to your kids can also be really important.
You can't control your kids, but you don't want them to be like some of our unhealthier versions.
Yes, absolutely.
Including myself now, but I'll get back in it. I'm working my way back.
Good. Always striving to be the best version of yourself. I like it.
Yeah. That harks back to another question I had for this podcast is when do you think you've stretched yourself too thin for commitments and all those things that you're trying to put on that image between like working out and volunteering for PTAs and work commitments and other commitments outside of it, sports maybe, the kids' commitments, all that kind of stuff.
I don't think that I have run into that myself, but I also know that me and my wife are not the types of parents, at least for our older kids, to have been extremely heavily involved in their extracurricular activities. So while we went to Braden's football games, we went to Noah's basketball games, we were never, coaching the teams. And I would foresee that is where it may get a little difficult when you start to, become too involved in like actually leading these organizations.
Yeah.
Are you currently leading any organizations for the children?
Not for the children yet. So we volunteer at daycare when they have events and stuff, but there's no organization there. But like our previous episode, Anna Celli starts at pre-K soon. And so we want to get involved in the school, whether it be PTA or coaching or whatever. I don't think I have what's in me to coach 20, 30 kids. Maybe if it was ice hockey or ultimate frisbee, just because I know the sports well enough, but that would take someone dragging me out and saying, you got to do this. But yeah, I could be an assistant coach or something. I don't know. Okay. All right. Yeah, we have commitments. I'm on 2 boards. Catherine's on 1 board in the city, and I'm one of those parents that's starting to feel a little stretched thin. I'm handling it now. I'm ready for grad school to be over.
I can imagine.
And then I'll breathe a breath of fresh air next year.
Okay.
And hopefully we'll still be recording this.
So I don't know. I think everyone has their own level of what they consider to be too much, or when they've become stretched too thin, if you will. And unfortunately, sometimes it takes getting to that point to realize I'm here. Like this is too much on my plate.
Yeah, maybe we're not quite there yet, but there's a lot on the plate.
Well, you're either just going to have to eat faster or push some of that to the leftover pile.
Yeah. Or just start saying no. There's another opportunity coming up that I think I'm saying no to because I'm looking at my schedule and I'm like, I think I'm maxed out. I'm done. I cannot add this to the pile of things to do.
Yep, but saying no can be very important in situations where you know that you just can't handle anything anymore. Like you don't want to be a yes person, if you will, and constantly taking on new responsibilities for yourself and for your children if you are not going to be able to handle it efficiently. And that's certainly a trait that I hope I pass on to all my children, is that it is okay to say, look, I can't do this right now. I have other commitments.
That's a good point. One of the things that makes us feel better about committing this stuff is that we have the philosophy of the kids come with us. Like, for example, Catherine had a meeting today and the kids were there playing, listening to what she was doing. It's, helping better the neighborhood, volunteer opportunity kind of thing. But the kids are there, they're being watched, they're playing on their own, but they're also listening and being exposed to that side of her that she's, trying to make the community a good place for her kids.
That's cool. Yeah, that's good exposure for them. Good way to help increase their community image of who their mom is. They see her on the daily here at the house, but then getting to see her outside doing other things. We're gonna have to cut that out. That was a terrible statement.
Hey, I'm the one that said "see" like 16 times in one sentence earlier, and I think we're keeping it. So.
Oh gosh.
You're allowed 1 or 2 other bad dad tangents.
Okay, well.
This isn't the perfect podcast. This is the growth podcast.
That's right. I'm going to take a mulligan on that one.
All right, go for it. Let's hear it.
No, it's good that they have those opportunities. I can't think of any recent examples. We pretty much always have our kids with us when we go out, but it's mostly to things like the mall or taking them grocery shopping. Mm-hmm. And so the community image that we present to them at the house, I believe, is probably similar to what they're seeing while we're out shopping. I can't think of anything on more like a professional level like what you just described. Okay. But it's nice that they have that opportunity to go out and experience that.
Yeah, but even when you're in that grocery store or auto shop or whatever you're taking them to. You're showing them, basic life. Hey, this is what you need to do to survive on a day-to-day basis too. So
This is true. Yep.
That's excellent.
And it's so neat to watch them grow as they pick up on those aspects of who you are, who your spouse is, without you even like realizing that they're doing it. You're not directly telling them this is how you interact with another individual, but they're learning by watching you. And it's just really cool to see their minds work as they process all this information.
So, since harking back to what you said about her talking to the cashier and inviting her to your birthday party, does that mean you've invited several cashiers to your birthday?
No, and it is the most comical thing. Me and Kimber will just talk about it because she does it very often. She will meet someone and instantly, "Hi, I'm Luna. My birthday is X date. Like, would you like to come?" Just very extroverted. Now, I know I'm an extroverted person, but not to the point that I'm, just inviting potentially random strangers to social events.
Yeah, that's funny. Maybe I should start doing that. I'd have a pretty rager birthday party, right?
I think good majority of our listeners probably have been to those parties that were hosted by their friends. They get there and they're like, "Gosh, I don't know half the people here. Like, how did they hear about it?"
Yeah. Yeah, my opportunity came and passed anyways with my birthday last week, so I'll just have to start inviting for next year.
It's never too early to start.
Yep. Just like you can't drink all day if you don't start in the morning.
Which, speaking of that, you're going to have to tell our listeners what we are sipping on, because honestly, I know the style, but I forgot the name.
Yeah, so this is a pour from Ben Holiday out in Missouri, I believe. It's their soft red wheat build. It's a barrel pick from the whiskey community I'm a part of. They make a lot of good whiskey. I have only had 2, and this one opened up really hot, but it's starting to open up to where it's a little smoother.
Yeah, it definitely has a pretty decent bite on the front end, but it has a very delicious aroma. You got that oak finish, and it does seem smoother as you continue to sip on it. So,
Yeah,
good choice.
The mouthfeel ends up pretty nice.
It's just one of that word just makes me laugh. Like, I understand what it means, but anytime someone says the mouthfeel, it just
yeah. Well, you're not gonna explain for everybody what mouthfeel means.
Well, maybe. No, if you've seen the Bud Light commercial where the guy's like, "It has superior mouthfeel." And by the way, I'm throwing all these terms out. Not sponsored.
Yeah.
Free publicity
yeah, we're
for
not
those we
sponsored
mentioned.
by Bud Light or Ben Holiday. But if Ben Holiday wants to invite me up for some whiskey, I'm down.
Yeah, and I'll have to tag along because I'm part of the podcast.
Right. Well, speaking of the podcasts, this is an image we're portraying to the whole world, essentially.
It is, and that's definitely a unique concept that even a generation previous to us would have been near unheard of. Like, just instant access to cultures, individuals from around the world and how they interact in their daily lives. I actually really like that. Yeah. And I am happy that our children will get to grow up in a society where they do have that access. And hopefully it makes them more well-rounded and more accepting of all people, because they are more exposed to it than previous generations would have been.
True. And it would be a really interesting experience if we had some parents call in from another country and tell us about their lives there.
Absolutely.
And raising children outside of the U.S.
Yep. Anytime I meet someone from a different country, I'm just always fascinated to, just hear about even like a daily interaction they have, because it can be so different than what we're used to. I've always been fascinated by that.
Great. Well, all of my notes are covered. I don't know if you have anything else as far as community image goes or the image we portray to others.
No? Well, actually, yes, I do. So you had briefly touched on the image that the children are taking from us. Do you feel like you have gained any insight into who you are by watching how they interact? Like the way that they present themselves to the community?
Kind of like how I asked you if you go out and ask cashiers to come to your birthday.
That's true.
I don't. I'll have to think on that and pay more attention to it in our real life situations, but it does seem to be more of a reflection, and I'll have to look at that and ponder on it. But yeah, her mentality of wanting to be with others and hang out and adapt, does that come from me, or is that an inherited thing? I'll have
Something to think about.
that one. Yeah. That's a good question to ponder and talk about in the comments section later.
I like it. Well, we are Dads Discuss. We're always open to anyone having any comments, writing in. We'd love to hear from you, hear your opinions on any of the topics that we cover.
Yeah, chime in. Let us know if you want to visit. I'll pour you a glass of whiskey. Cheers.
Cheers.
Thanks for listening to Dads Discuss.
Please like and subscribe wherever you are listening.
Also, comment any topics you would like us to discuss and share with your friends and family.
Finally, if you would like to be on the podcast or discuss any topics, please reach out via our contact information below.